After all the sacrifices I made, my own sons tossed me out. They stopped the car on the old dirt road, right in front of the gate to the farmstead my late husband and I built with so much sweat. The engine idled for a moment, the only sound in the heavy silence. "You can get out, Mom," Michael, my youngest, said without even looking at me. His voice was flat, empty of any feeling. Daniel, my eldest, sat in the passenger seat, just staring straight ahead. He gave a single, sharp nod, agreeing with his brother. The look in his eyes was something I'd never seen before, a cold, hard glare that made me a stranger to him. They didn't help me out of the car. They pulled me out as if I were a burden, an old piece of luggage they no longer wanted to carry. My feet hit the dusty ground, and I stumbled a little. They didn't even reach out to steady me. Standing there, watching their car, I felt the full weight of humiliation press down on me. My own sons, my own blood, were leaving me here, discarding me in the one place on earth that held all of my happiest memories. They thought they were leaving me with nothing. They thought they had finally won, that they could do whatever they wanted with what they called the inheritance. Their plan was so painfully clear. They would drive away, put me out of their minds, and sell this farm as fast as they could. Then, with the money in their pockets, they would find some little room for me in a nursing home and call it a day. They truly believed they had all the power. But as I stood there in the quiet, listening to the engine fade into the distance, I wasn't just feeling the sharp sting of betrayal. No, I was holding on to a secret, a decision I had made weeks before, precisely because I sensed this day was coming. I saw the greed in their eyes long before we got in this car. They thought the future of this place, our home, was in their hands. They were so sure of themselves. But the truth is, it already had another destiny. A destiny they could never imagine, not in a million years. The coldness in their eyes wasn't the only thing I would remember from that day. It was also the certainty that the final word, it would be mine. My name is Eleanor. I'm 75 years old, and for most of my life, my hands have been busy with a needle and thread. I was a seamstress. After my beloved husband Arthur passed away, I raised my two sons, Daniel and Michael, practically on my own. My life has always been a simple one, built on routine, on faith, and on good, honest work. My greatest joy was never in the city, but in the quiet weekends we'd spend at our farmstead. It was just a small piece of land. But Arthur and I bought it with every penny we'd saved over a lifetime. We built that little house together. I remember the feel of the cool bricks in my hands, the smell of fresh-cut wood. Every single tree in that orchard holds a story of ours, a memory. It was more than just land and wood. It was the heart of our family. After I was widowed, the farmstead became my sanctuary. It was the one place I still felt Arthur's presence so strongly. I could almost hear his laughter when the wind rustled through the apple trees. I'd spend hours there, just tending to my rose bushes, feeling close to him. It was my peace, and it was the place I always welcomed my granddaughter Lily. She's Daniel's daughter, a sweet, gentle soul. She was the only one who seemed to get it. She understood that the value of that place wasn't something you could write on a check. She'd help me in the garden, and we'd sit on the porch and just talk for hours. To Daniel and Michael, the farmstead was just a property, an asset, something that was, as they like to say, just sitting there, wasting its potential. I heard them say it more and more often. I always tried to ignore it. I truly believed, with all my heart, that a mother's love, the love I had poured into them their entire lives, would eventually speak louder than their greed. I thought it was a passing phase. I gave those boys everything I had. I paid for their education. I showered them with affection. I made sure our home was always filled with warmth and love. I can't even count the number of wedding dresses I sewed, the nights I stayed up late mending clothes for other people, just to make sure my sons had the best opportunities, the things I never had. I never imagined that when I reached my old age, the only things they would truly want from me were the things that came with a price tag, the things with a market value. And it was in that soil of blind love that the seed of ingratitude grew, silent and strong, ready to bear its bitter fruit. It started so subtly, I almost convinced myself I was imagining it. The change was like the turning of a season, slow and quiet. Until one day, you wake up and realize all the warmth is gone. The Sunday visits, the ones that used to be the highlight of my week, they started to dwindle. A phone call would come in the morning, always rushed. "Sorry, Mom, something came up at work," Daniel would say. Or Michael would chime in, "We have a last-minute thing, we just can't make it." The excuses were always plausible, always delivered with a tone of regret that I now realize was just for show. The calls became shorter, too. They used to be long, meandering conversations about their lives, their jobs, about Lily. Now they were clipped, efficient. "How are you, Mom?" "Good. Everything's fine here. Busy." "Okay. Gotta go. Talk soon." It felt like a duty they had to perform, a box to be checked off a list. When they did show up, maybe once a month, the air in my little city apartment felt heavy. They'd sit on the sofa my Arthur had picked out, looking around as if they were visiting a stranger. And the conversation, somehow it always found its way back to one thing: money. They wouldn't ask about my rose bushes at the farm, or if the apple trees were heavy with fruit that year. They'd talk about the land itself. "You know, Mom," Daniel would start, leaning forward with that intense look he gets. "We were looking at property values in that area. It's skyrocketing." Michael would nod like a puppet on a string. "A developer would pay a fortune for that land. A real fortune." They always dressed it up as concern for me. "That money could ensure you have a comfortable future," Daniel would say, with a practiced sincerity that made my skin crawl. "You wouldn't have to worry about a thing." I tried to explain it to them so many times. I'd look at my two boys, the children I had raised, and my voice would feel so small. "My comfort isn't in a bank account," I'd tell them. "My comfort is right there at the farm, among my plants, and my memories of your father." They would just smile at me, a soft, pitying smile. It was the kind of smile you give a stubborn child who doesn't understand how the real world works. I'll never forget the day Daniel turned to Michael, right there in my living room, as if I was deaf or invisible. He lowered his voice, but I heard him clear as day. "Mom just doesn't understand business." Each word was a small, sharp stab. The pain was a constant, dull ache that settled deep in my chest. But I held on to hope. I had to. I told myself this was just a phase. They were worried about me, that's all. This coldness, this obsession with money, it was just their clumsy, modern way of showing they cared. I clung to that thought like a lifeline. But then they started making decisions without me. One sunny afternoon, I drove out to the farmstead, just needing a few quiet hours to myself. As I pulled up, I saw a strange man walking along the property line with a measuring wheel, a clipboard tucked under his arm. My heart stopped. I felt a chill run through me despite the warm sun. I got out of the car and asked him what he was doing on my land. He was a real estate agent. He told me my son, Daniel, had sent him. Just to get an idea of the plot, he said. When I called Daniel later, his voice was so smooth, so dismissive. "Oh, that? It was nothing, Mom. Just getting some information. It's good to know these things. Don't you worry about it." But I did worry, because my instincts, that deep inner voice that every mother has, it was screaming at me now. It told me their plan was already in motion, moving silently forward. And I wasn't part of it. The promise to look after me, to make sure I was comfortable. Finally saw it for what it was. It was the bait, and I was about to feel the hook pierce right through my soul. That day, the one that broke everything, began with a lie. Michael came into my apartment in the morning with a brightness that felt out of place. He had a smile on his face, but it was thin, and it never reached his eyes. "Mom," he said, his voice trying too hard to be cheerful. "Pack a small bag, just a few things. We're taking you to spend a few days in a great place, somewhere closer to us." For a moment, I let myself believe him. A part of me, the part that was still a mother above all else, wanted to see this as a peace offering, a step back towards the family we used to be. So I nodded, and I did as I was told. I packed a small bag with a change of clothes, my reading glasses, and the old photo of Arthur I always kept on my nightstand. During the drive, they kept up the act. They sat in the front, talking to each other more than to me, their voices loud and excited. They spoke of how much better everything would be, how this was a new beginning. I sat in the back, silent, watching the familiar city streets blur past my window. With every mile we drove, the knot of ice in my stomach grew colder and tighter. I didn't know where we were going, but I knew it wasn't to a place of comfort. Then the car slowed. The smooth hum of the asphalt turned into the low crunch of gravel. My gaze snapped forward. I knew that sound. My breath caught in my throat when the car turned. It wasn't onto a new road or into a fancy new complex. It was the old dirt road, the one that led to the farmstead. My heart didn't just sink, it plummeted. Michael drove slowly down the lane and stopped right in front of the main gate, the one Arthur and I had painted together so many years ago. He cut the engine. The silence that filled the car was deafening. It was thick with everything they weren't saying. It was heavier than any argument we'd ever had. That's when Daniel finally turned in his seat and looked at me. His face was a blank mask, his eyes void of any warmth. "This is where you'll be staying for now," he said, his voice perfectly level, as if he were discussing the weather. "It's for the best. We'll handle the sale and then find a good place for you in the city." There was no room for discussion, no question. It was a verdict. I just stared at him, at the face of the little boy I had once held in my arms, and I couldn't find a single trace of him left. Michael got out of the car, walked around to my side, and pulled the handle. The door swung open. It wasn't an invitation. It was an eviction. Slowly, my body moving as if through water, I stepped out onto the dusty ground. My legs felt unsteady. Daniel got my small bag from the trunk and simply set it on the ground beside me. He didn't hand it to me. He didn't meet my eyes. Before getting back in the car, Michael paused for a second. He looked at me, a flicker of something. Was it guilt? Pity? In his eyes? But it was gone as quickly as it came. "Don't worry," he said, the words sounding hollow and rehearsed. "We'll call you." They both got back in the car. The doors shut with a heavy, final thud. The engine started, and they drove away, kicking up a cloud of brown dust that swirled around me, clinging to my coat, seeming to want to erase my very existence. I stood there, alone, watching the car disappear down the road. I looked at the gate of my paradise, the home I had built with love, and realized they had just turned it into the door of my emotional prison. In that instant, the lifetime of love I felt for them didn't fade. It shattered. It broke into 1,000 sharp, glittering pieces inside my chest. But from those broken pieces, my strength was born. The tears finally came, but they weren't the hot tears of despair I expected. They were quiet, cool tears that traced paths through the dust on my cheeks. I wasn't crying for my future or because I was alone. I was crying for a love I had to admit was gone. It was a kind of mourning, a final goodbye to the two little boys I remembered, the sons I had raised. I was mourning for a version of them that I now realized had probably never existed outside of my own hopeful heart. When the last tear fell, a strange calm settled over me. I took a deep, steadying breath, and the air smelled of dry earth and pine trees, the smell of home. I lifted my head and looked at the house, our little house, standing strong and silent at the end of the path. My sons had left me here to feel abandoned, but standing in this place, I felt the exact opposite. I wasn't a prisoner. I was the keeper of the gate. I was exactly where I belonged. I picked up my small bag and walked slowly up the path, my feet sure on the familiar ground. My steps weren't shaky or weak. They were deliberate. I walked onto the porch, the old wooden boards creaking a familiar welcome under my weight. I went straight to my rocking chair, Arthur's last gift to me, and sat down. My hands rested on the smooth, worn arms of the chair, and I began to rock, a gentle, steady rhythm. The image of their car driving away, of the dust cloud swallowing them whole, was sharp and painful in my mind. It tried to take root, to become the only thing I could see. But then, as I rocked, another memory pushed its way forward, so much stronger, so much clearer. It was me, just a few weeks ago. I wasn't on a dusty road. I was in a quiet, clean office, sitting across a wide wooden desk from a man in a crisp shirt. The notary. I could feel the weight of the pen in my hand again, see the thick, important-looking papers spread out before me. I remembered the serious look on the notary's face and the even more serious resolve in my own heart. I remembered the crisp, definitive sound my signature made on that paper. I had felt a shiver of sadness then, knowing why I had to do it, but I also felt a deep, unshakable sense of rightness. I had seen the greed growing in their eyes for months. I had heard in the way they talked about the farm, not as a home, but as a commodity. And I had decided right then and there to protect Arthur's legacy, to protect Lily's future, to protect this very piece of earth. My sons thought I was just a sentimental old woman, lost in her memories and her garden. They saw my quietness and thought it was weakness. They saw my love and thought it was blindness. They forgot who I was. They forgot that for 30 years, I was the one who balanced the books. I was the one who managed every penny, who stretched Arthur's paycheck to build a life, to pay for their schooling, to buy this very land. They forgot that I was the one who taught them how to be smart, but they never learned how to be wise. The silence I had kept over these last few months, as their visits grew colder and their words sharper, it wasn't me giving in. It was me watching. It was me listening. It was me confirming what my heart already knew to be true. I was simply waiting. Waiting for them to show their true colors so brightly, so undeniably, that there would be no going back. Today, they had done just that. They had played their hand, thinking the game was over. They had no idea I was just waiting for my turn. They underestimated me, and that was the biggest mistake they could have ever made. The days that followed were filled with a profound silence. The phone on the small table in the hallway didn't ring, not once. My sons didn't call. Their silence was more than just an absence of sound. It was a statement. It was the confirmation of their plan, the final nail in the coffin of my hope. They had left me here, and in their minds, the problem was solved. They had won. It was my granddaughter, Lily, who finally broke the quiet. Her voice on the phone was a lifeline, filled with a frantic worry that felt so genuine, so pure. She couldn't reach me at my city apartment, and she was scared. I listened to her panic, and with a calmness that surprised even me, I told her what had happened. I didn't cry or raise my voice. I just told her the simple, hard truth. Then I asked her to do something for me. I asked her to come to the farmstead, and I asked her to bring something with her. A red folder tucked away at the very back of my closet behind the winter coats. A document she didn't even know existed. In the meantime, the story my sons were telling began to spread. The news of my disappearance, as they framed it, rippled through the family. To my sister, to my cousins, they painted a picture of a confused old woman. They said I had become difficult, that I had decided to isolate myself at the farm, in a fit of stubbornness. They told everyone how worried they were, how they were trying their best to sort things out for me. The phone calls started then, but they weren't from my sons. They were from relatives. Their voices were syrupy with pity, treating me like a child. They'd ask if I was eating, if I was warm enough, if I was sure I knew what I was doing. They spoke to me slowly, carefully, as if my mind were made of fragile glass. With every call, the humiliation cut deeper. I was being judged and condemned by people who had only heard one side of the story, a story designed to make me look helpless and senile. I felt utterly alone, adrift in a sea of judgment. I started to let the phone ring, but then a car pulled up the lane, and it wasn't one I dreaded. It was Lily. She got out of the car, looking anxious, her eyes searching. She found me in the garden, on my knees, patiently tending to my flowers. She stopped and just watched me for a moment. She saw me, not as confused or lost, but as serene, as home. She ran to me then, and when she hugged me, it was with a fierce, protective strength. All the loneliness, all the sting of those pitying phone calls, it just melted away in her embrace. She pulled back, her eyes clear and resolute. "Grandma," she said, her voice full of a fire I recognized. "I'm with you. What are we going to do?" Her presence was the only anchor I needed. Looking at her face, so full of love and trust, I knew with absolute certainty that the painful decision I had made weeks ago was the right one. The crushing loneliness I had felt was just a quiet, necessary preparation for the moment of truth that was still to come. They tried to paint me as senile, but they had no idea that my clarity would be the ruin of their plan. A week passed, a week of birdsong, warm coffee, and quiet conversations with Lily. And then, one afternoon, I saw a cloud of dust rising from the end of the road. A strange car, shiny and black, pulled up and stopped at the gate. My heart didn't race. It just settled, ready. Daniel and Michael got out, and with them was another man, older, in a dark suit, carrying a briefcase. The buyer. They came up the path with smug, businesslike smiles on their faces. Smiles that faltered and then vanished completely when they saw us. There I was, sitting in my rocking chair on the porch, with Lily right beside me. Both of us calmly sipping coffee, as if we were expecting company for tea. Daniel stopped at the bottom of the steps, his face tightening with impatience. "Mom, what are you still doing here? Didn't we have a talk?" His voice was sharp, annoyed, like I was a stubborn piece of furniture he'd have to move himself. I took one last slow sip of my coffee before placing the cup on the small table beside me. I stood up, my movements unhurried. I wasn't afraid of them anymore. "Yes, Daniel, we talked," I replied, and my voice was firm, clearer than it had been in years. "You spoke, and I listened. Now it's my turn to speak." I gestured with my hand toward the man in the suit, who was looking back and forth between us, confused. "Is this gentleman the buyer?" I asked, my tone polite. Before they could even form an answer, I continued, "Well, I'm very sorry he's wasted a trip, because this property is not for sale." A short, ugly laugh burst out of Michael. It was a sound full of disdain. "Mom, please," he said, shaking his head like I was a fool. "Don't make this difficult. The inheritance will be divided. It's the law. You can't stop it." The word hung in the air between us. Inheritance. That's when I looked at Lily. She met my gaze, her eyes steady. and she reached down for the red folder resting on her lap. Inheritance? I asked, a small sad smile touching my lips. It's funny you should mention inheritance, Michael, because this farmstead is no longer mine to give. A month ago, I transferred the deed to its new owner. Lily stood up. She opened the red folder and took out a single, crisp sheet of paper. She walked down the steps and handed the copy of the deed directly to the man in the suit. I watched my sons. I watched the blood drain from Daniel's face. I watched Michael's jaw literally drop open, his mouth hanging slack in disbelief. The shock, the raw, utter humiliation that washed over their faces was a sight I knew I would cherish, not with malice, but with a sense of profound, quiet justice. "The farmstead," I said, my voice carrying across the silent yard, "now belongs to my granddaughter, Lily. She is the only one who ever valued this place, and the only one who ever valued the woman who built it." I looked them both in the eye, my two sons who had become strangers. "You can leave now. This visit is over." There was no shouting, no screaming match, no satisfying scene of revenge. There was only the quiet, unshakable strength of the truth and the reclaimed dignity of a mother who had finally learned to put herself first. The days that followed were the most peaceful I had known in years. After they drove away that afternoon, a quiet settled over the farmstead that was different from the loneliness I had felt before. It wasn't an empty quiet. It was a clean quiet. The air felt lighter, as if a storm I hadn't even realized I was bracing for had finally passed. Daniel and Michael never contacted me again. Not a phone call, not a letter, nothing. And the strange thing is, their silence, which once would have felt like a knife twisting in my heart, was now a source of relief. It was the closing of a door that had been letting in a cold draft for a very long time. Their absence wasn't a void. It was an open space, a space for something new to grow. And something new did grow. Lily decided to move to the farmstead. She packed up her small city apartment and brought her life here, to this house. She said she wanted to help me, but I knew it was more than that. She wanted to be here. She started making plans to use one of the old sheds to start her own small business with ornamental plants and rare flowers. The house, which for a time had felt like a stage for betrayal, was suddenly a home again. It came alive with her laughter, with the sound of music playing softly in the evenings, with the warm, comforting smell of cornbread baking in the oven. My routine now is simple, and in its simplicity, I have found a happiness I thought I had lost forever. I wake up naturally, not to an alarm clock, but to the cheerful sound of birds arguing in the trees outside my window. I spend my mornings in the garden, my hands in the cool, dark earth. I'm teaching Lily all the secrets of my rose bushes, the ones Arthur and I planted. I show her how to talk to them, how to feed them, how to know just where to prune them to make them stronger. Seeing her listen so intently, her face full of genuine interest, fills a part of my heart I thought would always be empty. In the late afternoon, after our work is done, we make a pot of tea and sit together on the porch, in our rocking chairs and just watch the sunset. We watch the sky turn from blue to brilliant shades of orange and pink, and we don't always have to talk. Just being there, together, in the quiet, is enough. I didn't get rich. I didn't gain some great material prize. On the contrary, I gave away my most valuable worldly asset. But what I got in return is something no amount of money could ever buy. I gained my peace, I gained my self-respect, and I gained the quiet, steady company of someone who truly, unconditionally loves me. Sometimes, of course, a little pang of sadness still finds me. It usually comes at night when the house is still. I'll see a flash of a memory, Daniel as a little boy with scraped knees, or Michael's face lit up on Christmas morning. It's a gentle ache, a ghost of the love I once had. But I've come to understand that we can't force anyone to love us or to value what we hold dear. We can only love them and hope for the best. And when that hope is gone, we have to learn to let go. The pain of their betrayal has changed. It's no longer a fresh, open wound. It's become a serene scar, a quiet reminder of a hard-learned lesson. I no longer feel like a victim of their greed. I feel like the guardian of my own happiness, the keeper of my own peace. I learned that sometimes, to truly blossom, you have to prune the branches that steal your light. When I look back on it all, sitting here in the quiet of the evening, I see that the biggest mistake I made wasn't in loving my sons. The mistake was how long it took me to see what they were becoming, right before my very eyes. For so many years, my love for them was like a thick fog. It was warm and comforting, and it wrapped around everything, but it also kept me from seeing the path clearly. I loved them so much that I slowly, without even noticing, forgot to love myself. My entire world revolved around their needs, their futures, their happiness. I measured my own worth by how well they were doing. I gave them every last piece of myself. My time, my energy, the money I earned with these tired hands. And I never asked for anything grand in return. I never expected them to repay me or to shower me with gifts. All I ever truly wanted was the bare minimum. Simplest, most basic thing one human being can give another. I just wanted their respect. And when it became painfully clear that I wasn't going to receive it, that my worth to them was tied only to a piece of land, I was left with a choice. I could either continue to wither away in the shadow of their greed, or I could make the hardest decision of my life and choose myself. It makes me wonder. Now, I ask you, have you ever been treated as if you were invisible by the very people who should be the first to see you? The people who are supposed to protect you most? Have you ever had that hollow feeling in your chest when you realize your worth is being measured only by what you can offer them, what you can give away, and not by who you are as a person? It's a quiet kind of heartbreak, isn't it? The kind that doesn't scream, but just slowly chips away at your soul until you feel like a ghost in your own life. If you have ever felt that way, I want you to listen to me now. Always remember that your story, the life you have lived, the memories you hold inside you, they are priceless. Your dignity is not something that can be negotiated or given away. It is the core of who you are. And protecting your heart, protecting your peace of mind is not an act of selfishness. It's the most fundamental act of self-love there is. You must never, ever allow anyone, not even your own blood, to make you feel small or disposable. You are not a piece of old furniture to be discarded when you're no longer useful. You are a person with a history written in every line on your face and a spirit that deserves to be honored. Your life is your most precious possession, and only you can be its true owner. I learned the hard way that the true legacy we leave behind for the world isn't written on a deed or stored in a bank account. For so long, I thought my legacy was the farm, the property, the thing I could pass down. But I was wrong. The real legacy is quieter than that. It's in the strength we finally find in ourselves. The moment we command respect simply by refusing to be disrespected any longer. It's in the way we stand our ground when the world and even our own family tries to erase us. My sons tried to erase me. They tried to turn me into a sad final chapter in their own story of success. They wanted to close the book on their old life, and I was just a loose page they needed to tear out. But they didn't get to write my ending. I did. Today, sitting here on this porch, watching Lily water the rose bushes that carry my husband's memory, I know what my true inheritance is. It's this quiet, this stillness in my soul. It's my peace of mind. And after all these years, it is finally, truly safe. It's a strange thing to realize someone is trying to quietly remove you from your own story, to just unsubscribe you from the life you built. It makes you value your connections, the ones that are real and true, that much more. And it makes you want to hold on to them. And if you want to keep our connection, to keep receiving real stories just like this one, please be aware that sometimes YouTube might be unsubscribing you without you even noticing. It's a small thing, but it can break a connection. So please, just take a moment to check if you're still subscribed to the channel, and make sure to turn on that little notification bell so you don't miss a thing.